Huey Lewis and the News. I'll tell you what, really enjoyed their music if you were a fan back in the day. Hello, everybody. It's Thursday. What's up, everyone? Good to see you. Thank you for stopping by, dropping in, turning on, and being part of the discussion, which is fun. I think it is. I love y'all's comments. The chat room is always kicking and alive. And welcome all of you in the chat room as I get myself fully orientated here and acclimated. There we go. So, hello everyone. Hello, Lauren. Good to see you, dear. What's up, Peter? What's up? Good to see you, Gaia. How are you and Paul? Linda Espinoza. Much love. Josh, what's up? Mr. Floyd, good to see you. Hello, Shirley. Who else did I see in here? Charles, how are you, my friend? Good to see you. Lilith, always good to see you. Let's see. Carol, good to see you as well. And as I look back here, Jan, hello. She's going to be cooking. Hey, sounds good. Uh, let's see. Gilbert, what's up? Good to see you, brother. Much love to you. Um, what else is happening as I pull back all the way? John, good to see you, sir. So, someone said it is still cold. Ontario. Tell you, we're all over the world. Well, warmer days are coming. Hello, Boxcar Willie. How are you, my good friend? When I saw your name there, this kind of remind me. How many of you know what Zydeco music is? You ever heard it? It's unique. If you've ever been down in Louisiana, that's primarily where you will find Zydeco music. But yeah, sometimes listening to other groups, brings it in. But it's a interesting interpretation of music. Um, you can just imagine it being like 95 degrees and 95% humidity. Yeah. Louisiana. So, speaking favor over us all, nothing missing, nothing broken. And the Kings of Nibiru are back. How are you? Good to see you, Chloe. Hello. Chris, good to see you. Millie, what's up? Hello, Brenda. Good to see you, Street Mom. Fireflies, hello, what's up? And 555, Wayne. Zydeco is off the hook. See? Yeah. You can really dance to Zydeco music too. It's it's just, every time I hear it, I knew a particular individual, very unique individual, colorful, and yeah, introduced me to Zydeco, and I said, "Wow!" And it seems like the more beer you get into you, the better the music sounds, and I guess that's true of all things like that. Anyway, hello, Robert Scott. What's up? Good to see you, brother. Lost in Space. What's up, Rick? Good to see you, and hello, Colleen. Loving the research, dear. So, let's get right into this. By the way, remember my prediction. So it's kind of like the word is out. Um, how many of you noticed the cabinet meeting? It was really a board meeting, just another name. The function is still the same. The United States is a corporation. But did any of you see the pictures? So you had kind of the round table, right? But did you notice the women, particularly those who have a seat at the table? Did anyone see them? And can you tell me what was interesting about them? I'll just look in the chat room because there's a delay. I'm ahead of you. Hi, how y'all doing? And then I can go and look at what's going on, so-called real time, and see myself waving to myself. You gotta love that. I mean, that's being high on other things. So anyone, no one's answering in the chat room, so I'm assuming no one knows. That's cool. Chloe said I didn't see it. Well, you probably go back and take a look at it when I mentioned this. So all of the women at the table were wearing red and black. Mm-hmm. Let he who have eyes to see, see, right? But yeah, pick that up right. And when I saw that, I told Lynn, I said, look at that. Did you see that? And of course, my wife says, well, explain it to me. And I said, that's powerful magic. You know, red and black is like the power colors, particularly in magic, black magic, white magic, purple magic. Anyway, found that to be very interesting. And so I was telling you, and it's going to catch on. Trust me, I started it, but it will catch on. You're going to see the metaphor or the analogy of Elon and Merlin. I'm telling you. And did you see Elon in the meeting? Yes, you did. Did you see where he was standing? This is all important. I mean, this doesn't happen by random. But more importantly, Elon's attire. Tell me. Hello, Lynn. Man, the wind is blowing outside. That's all I got to say. Paul, Joe, good to see you. Vampy, hello, dear. Uh, so, yeah, um, Black Hat, MAGA, Magician, Merlin, and Trump, metaphorically is akin to the king. That's already been out there. But it's this type privily. That's all it is. Sure, it is. And then that's how people want it, and that's how they like to see it. So, we're going to get into an interesting discussion. I was up last night because, damn ribs, man. I'll tell you what, the human body is just an amazing piece of engineering. And it's amazing as well when you have components of your body that you just don't normally pay attention to. Yeah, you get it outside out of kilter, you'll pay attention to it, and it has that chain reaction. You have one area, and then yeah. Anyway, I digress. So I've been up, and I go into my spirit, and I traverse back in time. And the more that I can read, the more that I can comprehend and add to my knowledge, the deeper I can get into it. And so this is titled The Return. Could be titled The Return of What? Um, and that's an interesting point. What? Oh, by the way, let me finish up with the prediction. Um, so last night, the secretary or the head of the EPA, the guy that just got it confirmed, um, 75% cut in employee and staff. Then it came out that starting by March 12th, all these secretaries of these agencies are to have the current employees prepared for massive reductions. I may not be the smartest cat in the world, but yeah, you put that together in humans, and suddenly they're out on, the unemployment lines where they thought it was going to be. You need magic. That's all I got to say. You need magic. So, the return. Every religion and every culture that I've studied all talk about a prophecy of some sort or kind of a return of whatever their gods were, you know. like the shirt says, polytheism. Why have just one imaginary friend? Um, just like the story of the virgin birth is not just in one religion, it goes way back to the Egyptians. So, as I was getting into this and this, we're going to get into the return of Saturn. It's an amazing book. We're going to cover highlights of it. To get through it all would take a very long time, and most people get bored. Where I don't, but you know, people like fresh content. I can dig it. So it's important for us to understand in the Western world, and now I guess virtually it's spread everywhere, that when you read books about God, gods, angels, demons, magic, whatever, it all has a central starting place. And the thing about it is, it's not that long ago. So as this gets strapped in, everybody, because we won't be making any rest stop here stops. We're going to keep on because this is interesting stuff. And cheers, by the way. So I put this little PowerPoint together in order for all of us to have a frame and point of reference. And because we're going to be talking about the beginning, at least the beginning of us, or so they say. But the thing about it is, everything where we're concerned and where the vast majority of humanity is concerned is this little area of the planet called the Fertile Crescent. Now we're going to go back. I think we're back as far as, I think, maybe 8,000 BC. Um, but this is where it all began. So 8,000 to 1900 BC. These are important spots. I mean, right now, this is the desert. You've got Iraq, Iran, and the subsequent other kingdoms and countries in the Arabian Peninsula. But we're going to be looking at Uruk, Lagash. We're going to look at Sumer. These are all really like important things. And if you can get a handle on the area and realize that virtually everything we conceive, whether it be in the form of paganism, lost cultures, the pantheon of their gods, their beliefs. All of our beliefs come from here. This is where they come from. And this little area called Mesopotamia it's interesting because and we're going to be getting into that, so it's really going to be a quite fun history lesson. This is where it's all happening. Now, we know that there were other places on Earth, other civilizations, other cultures, but unfortunately, they don't have a seat at the table. And that's odd because their cultures have something to add to the collective of humanity. But it's interesting when you look at these cities, and by the way, they were cities. Uh, Babylon, I believe it is is it what, the sixth, seventh wonder of the world? Their gardens. I've seen artist depiction. It was amazing. It had to be just an amazing sight. Um, I studied where the Hebrews, when they were captured by Nebuchadnezzar, and it had to freak them out because you go through the freaking desert and all of a sudden you're into this crescent valley, this area, And you could see Babylon from a good 2-day walk. You would see it. And it was this magnificent, primarily blue, but they had the colors, and it was just nothing that could be replicated today. So, and of course, Sumer, the Sumerians, kind of the ones who started history. They're the first culture that we have in this rebirth of where the written form of language was first done. So 3500 BC to 1000. It's not that long ago. And you can't help to thinking that our history is not so long. So what happened? Well, something happened. Um, but no matter how you slice it and dice it with a Slice-O-Matic 2000 with the accessories of, chopping, the fact of the matter is this is where God is from. God is not from Australia. God is not from South America. God is not from North America. God came, this is where, well, either he was born or invented, however you want to put it. But this is where God's from. And if you look at these ancient settlements, these cities, remember, they were smart people. These are people just like you and I. They got up every morning. They did what they had to do to survive, to improve their lives, their culture. There were city councils. There were regions, governors. I mean, it was a very sophisticated form and a very interesting form when it comes into the belief system. Is important because that is what and where, excuse me, the patriarch of the Abrahamic religions came from. And it's interesting because you have to look at what his culture was. And he was part of of the Chaldees, which was a province of Sumer. Um, he worshipped Inanna, the moon goddess. His family did. The ziggurat, they say, is still here. So, and I know this can be somewhat boring, but it's really not, because again, this is where most likely your God or whatever your belief system doesn't really matter. This is where it originated from. Everything here. And you can see the trade routes. Now, the one thing that I have to tell you is the camels. Camels weren't really brought into the scene till much later. It was horses, but anyway. So this region is where our concept of God came from in all forms of magic, basically. Egyptian, I mean, it's all here. And it's divided up into how God or gods existed. Um, this thing called in time the antediluvian time. Now, I don't know if these are Homo sapiens or not. I don't, because it's been downhill ever since then. And they were taller in stature, stronger, smarter. Yep. They had a form of technology, but apparently they were able to master theirs where we are not. But we also know that history, how we have seen it, is with the world and the continents where they are. But we know, in fact, that isn't the way where they came from. And if you're going to tell me that there were no people here, I may argue that. Um, we know that there were effects upon the earth. Um, you could say a pole flip. I think that would probably be very much in reason. But there was also this electromagnetic change to the planet, which affected us. But yeah. So we know that In our recent history, there apparently was this vapor, this mist that surrounded the planet. Um, it is even said that because of this canopy, um, it blocked out the UV, blocked out radiation of different lights. The visible light spectrum was more enhanced. And so Earth was in this basically this amniotic fluid, this cocoon. And there was obviously a god or gods or goddess that most likely was involved. If you say, well, no, this is just pure science, well, science is just merely outdated magic. The point is, the earth was different, very much different. Question is, was it the same God that we only read about? And according to the Jewish calendar, the Adam came in, and I believe it's something like 35, 34 BC. Recent, very recent. So that's why when we get into those books of the Colburn Bible, the bronze books, makes it very interesting because they speak of this, of a time that something happened. Mud Fossil Universe Roger over there would, gets something happened. I don't know what. There was a shift, a change. It was sudden. It was a catastrophe, cataclysmic. Um, Life forms were here, intelligent, seemed to be bipedal, but weren't exactly like us. And if you go by the story of when this transition of Homo sapiens was taking place, then it really comes down then to these three brothers that brought everything back in. Now, it gets really weird because what was involved here? It wasn't natural. Something um, either speeded up, enhanced, or both or more of reality. Atmospheric changes, changes in the sun, changes in the earth, all of this having an impact on Homo sapiens. Were they by themselves? Don't think so, because if you go by one narrative, you have this one entity whacked out, as much as it may be, responsible for all of this. Didn't have a problem cursing, didn't have a problem committing genocide. That's all right. But something drastically happened, so much so that there was a shifting of the planet itself. And all one has to do is look at a globe today. We've all seen it. South America was in one time attached to Africa. And if you push the same thing with Australia, the subcontinent of India, yeah. So, and I thought I had some others I wanted to show you because, wow, when you look at the possibility of what life forms, what these bipedals were, they were they had some similarities to us, but that is about it. So, here I'm trying to read in the chat room. Never do that. So, the return. You've got primarily, everyone focusing in on the Pope. He's eventually going to kick the bucket. Interesting term. Because back in the day, a dead body wouldn't kick a butt. Anyway, I digress. So, but a large portion of one religion of the Abrahamic faith systems believe that their deity is coming back. Um, that's the one thing all three of the religions have in common. The Jews believe that they'll inherit the earth, that their God will come and slay their enemies. The Muslims believe Muhammad will return and take his rightful position. And of course, the Christians believe that Jesus will return. And all of these returns are um, precluded by war, death, famine, disease, a reduction of the human population, drastic reductions. And that's interesting because if all three of those religions are correct, I'd like to see how that will turn out. Got a feeling it's like, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense at all, because it doesn't. But anyway, so what if all three of those belief systems and others originated with a deity, a God that modern day man hasn't been taught about? I want to read something to you. I'm gonna pull this up. So um, this is an article I pulled up called "Weapons of Mass Distraction," and this is a small chapter of this book we're going to get into. It's called The Second Coming of Saturn. And now we'll get into this later, but I wanted to read this excerpt before we get into it. And this is chapter 14. We'll be jumping back and forth. This is about Enlil, God of the gods. So as you're doing whatever you're doing, Jan, as you're cooking, this is going to be interesting. It says the chief god of Mesopotamia before the political rise of Babylon was the deity called the Great Mountain, Enlil. Scholars used to believe that the god's name was a combination of the Sumerian words En, meaning Lord, and Lil, meaning air, wind, or stormy. As scholars have looked deeper into the nature of the deity, however, a growing number have concluded that Lord Wind or Lord Ether is too simple. The stories and descriptions of Enlil don't include any characteristic you'd expect from a wind or storm god. Hmm. Based on his identification with El and Kumarbi, the others we'll discuss before we reach the end of this series, Enlil should be understood not as Lord of the air, but as a universal God who controls different spheres and domains, different areas without any defined specialization. Now, I find that very interesting. Excuse me, it's clipped like that. Um, if you look at it today, every one of the world's gods have that same moniker, and is the best that the written record has shown. This is where it started with Enlil. So it's odd. And over the decade, folks, we've discussed that. I get this suspicion about Yahweh, about Jehovah, about Jesus, all of those characters, that really it's just a name change. You know, remember I used to go to those meet and greets, hello, my name is, yeah. Um, so in other words, Enlil was simply the God. That makes the etymology, that was the word, ladies, we were trying to think of the other day, of Enlil's name is easier to grasp. Rather than a Sumerian, which is En plus Lil, his name most likely derives from the doubling of the Semitic word Ilu, God. Ilu, Il, meaning God of gods, or God of all the gods. That fits the character of Enlil, El, and Kumarbi. In their respective pantheons, all of them were considered creators of the world, described by epithets like Father of the Gods, Ancient One, the All, and so on. Folks, we haven't traveled that far down the block. To the people of the ancient world, Enlil and El and Kumarbi bridged the gap between time immemorial and the present day. In each case, the god had assumed kingship over the pantheon by replacing a primordial deity who represented the sky or heaven. Enlil and Kumarbi supplanted Anu, while El took the place of the Simeon, which is heaven. In my view, this is the fallen realm fake news to diminish the true God of heaven and earth and all creation by slandering the sky god as remote, disinterested, and in some accounts, literally neutered. No balls. Now, this is interesting because to me, you may know this, and if you do, congratulations, the first time to it. Hey, it's like the first time for all of us. I told you, this is where God comes from. If you pray, worship, whatever, this is where most likely they came from. There wasn't anyone else. And if you read now the translations, wow. I mean, you go, well, that's just amazing because each so-called sacred writing or book after that had the same thing. They just rearranged it. It's the same house. It's just the furniture. They painted the walls and put up some tile, got a few chimes going. It said this recent reconsideration of the nature of Enlil is quite different from the way the god was traditionally been understood by scholars. And this is as late when I'm talking as late 2015. I mean, everything's being turned upside down. Because what are you going to say? If someone presents you with the archaeological facts, written documents that, well, this preceded your God, and this preceded the Jewish God, the Christian God, all the gods by some 2,500 years. Wow. I mean, come on. Rather than emerging from Sumer in the south, as Mesopotamian civilization is assumed to have done, recent research shows that the god was transplanted by Sumer by migrants from the north or northwest. When the Amorites first encountered the civilizations of the Akkad and Sumer in the 24th century BC, the two most popular deities among the newcomers were the moon god, Ira, called Sin in the Akkadian language, and Nana in Sumer, and the god under the Amorite name El. This is documented by the Amorite personal names logged in official Sumerian and Akkadian records. If we then take a look at the 43 most popular Amorite names, and in this case, Amorite names occurring 3 times or more, we can see immediately the moon god, Era, and El, God, are the 2 most popular and only theophotic elements in these early Amorite personal names. Well, hell, what do we do with that? So we have God, the God, and the moon god, goddess. going way, way back. In our study of the divine feminine and the serpent, there is a direct correlation between the two, that we know that there was a time, and it seems to be within this time frame meaning between 8000 BC to the year so-called 2025 AD, um, that the goddess was worshipped, and that the serpent was basically always with her. The serpent representing wisdom, the serpent representing healing. I mean, yeah. This is a striking parallel with the Akkadian personal names. This parallel pleads against the Amorites as newcomers because such a phenomenon is typically the result of long-term contact and or acclimation. And they actually have a word for that, and it's called acculturation. Which then brings me up to what I always think about, this thing about how the Hebrews, they didn't really even know Yahweh. Abraham had the interaction, and of course, Isaac, Jacob, and then the 12 brothers. Um, so they go down to Egypt and stay there 490 years. Now, there's no way you're going to tell me, because that defies what we have witnessed with other cultures. If another culture is subjected to a counterculture, and whichever that culture is the strongest, it begins to have its domination in the cultural traditions. There's no way you're going to tell me, that a group of people, regardless if they were considered outsiders, 490 years, they're going to integrate into what? I would say the Egyptian culture. It would have to be. Anyway, I digress. Hope you're having as fun as this with me, because the point to all this is that if somehow, with recent translations, more tablets, scrolls, cylinders being found, as we get more into the story of understanding how the story was put together. But for me, I'll just tell you, it makes me feel at least somewhat a little wiser to how it all began. Because if it turns out that it is Enki or Enlil, one or both, they could be playing the biggest mind fuck on a species ever. I'm just saying. So, this new research, just published in 2014, during the time of Abraham and Isaac, in texts dated between 1900 BC to 1791 BC, the only two gods attested among the Amorites of Mesopotamia were the moon god and the god, considering the number of gods in the Mesopotamian pantheon. It is significant that the Amorites in the Akkad and Sumer during the lifetime of Abraham only honored two of them. And if you just look at this from a point of magic, all right, let's just say we're dealing with extraterrestrial beings that seem to have a higher intelligence than we have. I actually wrote this down. I said, so where did the God come from? All cultures speak of return. Why did they leave, and where did they go? And what if it's just possible that we have a entity, a deity, that has been jacking with us, all of us? I mean, seriously. there's evidence to that. Because how did Abram, by the way, and he didn't get the name Abraham until after he made this blood covenant thing. It's one of the things I entertain myself with in my notes is that, all right, and we've talked about this before in depth. So where did this God come from? Enki and Enlil never required an animal sacrifice. So where did this God come from? And then why did Abram, who was already rich, I mean, so he was going to be made richer. Okay, I can get that. Never rich enough. But why would he leave his family's history, tradition of worshiping certain deities, this case, the moon goddess, Inanna, and he exchanged that for a matriarchal deity? That still doesn't make any sense to me. Unless this God was Enki, because Enlil apparently is in hell. We're going to find that out. And then it gets back to this god Saturn, because in the background is this, what we're going to get into. We'll get into it tomorrow too. Because it seems like there's a controller here. You know, it's that unseen power. And for me, and the constructed within me, it looks at this, that's why I can never go back to that God. I can't go back to anything associated with that God because I really don't know who that God is. And I don't like that God. I mean, this gets really strange. And did something happen to, let's say, Enki? Did he just go crazy? I mean, can the gods go crazy? They made a movie of that, saying the gods must be crazy. Yeah. This it goes on to say, why these two? I discussed the moon god in some detail in this gentleman's book that we're going to go at. The book is, by the way, Bad Moon Rising. It appears that the moon god was considered the god of the Amoru land. In other words, the god of the Amorites. So the history that I grew up on was taught, and Bible is not history, it's literature. But in any case, the Old Testament is considered to be a kind of history. By the way, the Amorites were the enemies of Yahweh. He wiped them out. And why would he want them gone? Why would he want all the knowledge wiped out? Kind of like a super rogue AI program. You see, I think there's more to this battle. And I don't know, we'll be able to draw your own conclusions, but it seems to me there's a battle we're not really hearing about, but maybe bits and pieces. And I don't know, maybe we're seeing a counteroffensive being launched. Why not? It happened in our history, our recent history. Why wouldn't it be happening again? And, maybe 2,000 years isn't that big of a deal. I mean, if you were born on a planet that had an orbit of, let's say, I don't know, 1,500 years, 1,200 years, well, you can be 10 years old in physical form, and you can look at the rest of us, we'll be dust in the wind. Anyway, says we may reasonably conclude, therefore, that the god worshipped by the nomadic Amaru peoples in the Balkaharan region of the epithets, the Amaru and the Baal Sadi, at the time of the Mari, an old Babylonian text, was a lunar deity. Sometimes he was specifically named or at least identified with sin. S-I-N. You are all sinners. You all come from the real God, and that God is sin. Got your attention? I hope. Says this research identifies the Mesopotamian deity Amaru, generally considered a separate entity by most scholars as the moon god, and places the center of his cult in the very region that produced the family of Abraham. The area along the Balak River and around the city of Haran, which was home to a well known temple to Sin. I know some of you are finding this as a Colin, you got to admit, this is, yeah. So if you got that sin problem, you might want to kind of do a little research on that. It says the similarity between the Baal Sadeh, or the Lord of the Mountain, referring to the Amoru sin, and Yahweh's epithet El Shaddai, the God of the mountain, is obvious. The fallen realm doesn't hesitate to steal that which belongs to their creator. The Balak Haran region is roughly 100 miles west of Ukish, where the god had been worshipped under the name Kum Mabi for probably, get this, 1,500 years by the time of Abraham. This shows that there was a complete cultural shift in the spiritual, the ethereal realm. Something happened. There was indeed a war in heaven, literally. I mean, this God probably hasn't been worshipped. What if you look at the Great Schism of 1514? That's when the new God, the new Christian God, was created. Yeah. Holy crap, Batman. um, let's get back. And it's known that Ukish and Haran were connected by an important trade route, linking the resource-rich mountains north of Urkish to markets in northern Syria and the Mediterranean port near Antioch. It's not a stretch to theorize that the cult of the god Kummarbi, El Enlil, was carried to the Haran by travelers along the route over the centuries. This also establishes a link between the Hurarians and the Amorites and suggests a path of transmission from the north to Sumer. While the Hurarians remained in the outer Fertile Crescent, the Amorites moved south along the Euphrates and Tigris during the second half of the third millennium BC. They developed a pretty rough reputation, especially the Tandu tribe, about whom we'll talk more about, that contributed to the collapse of the last Sumerian kingdom to rule Mesopotamia. By the time of Abraham, around 1900 BC, Amorites controlled nearly everything from the West Iran to the Mediterranean. And this is important. I mean, and this is what I think as a fellow practicer of the arts. Um, You got to have your shit together. You have to know what you're dealing with. And the more that you have a grasp on history and you connect that to whatever your practice, your modality is, you're in a superior position. And by that, I mean, you can cut all the bullshit and say, listen, where are you from? What specific time? And now you have a point of reference in which you can judge and gauge. That's just me, but take it for what it's worth. Um, yeah, let's continue. Mm-hmm. It says a trilingual god list from the Ugaritic composed during the time of the judges confirms that the Amorites, the Hunarians, the Akkadians, the Sumerians all worshipped the god with this handy linguistic equation. Enlil equals Kumarbi, which equals L. Like the Amorites, the name Kumarbi may come from northern Syria. It probably means he of Kumer, a site identified with the modern village of Kumer, about 25 miles northwest of Aleppo. Today, it's home to about 600 souls in war-torn Afrin province of northwestern Syria in the second millennium BC. It belonged to a kingdom called Mukish, which is likely why Hurarian religious texts name Kumari's view as Musk Shananu. Now, I know these are a lot of names, but and I'll pull up here later. I mean, it gets even more detailed, but we'll pull back on this one. I think the point to all this is it ain't what we've been told. And I know looking at the time, it's like, where does time go? The book that we will be kind of going through, because it's very fascinating. This is Derek Gilbert. In fact, he has a YouTube channel. I'm going to try to reach out to get him to come in and talk more about this. So this is the second coming of Saturn, the Great Conjunction, America's Temple, and the return of the Watchers. And as you can see in the cover of his book, it says the return of old Saturn's reign with new breed of men and dawning from heaven, down from heaven. And I just want to go into a little bit of this. This again, Derek P. Gilbert. I have this on my Kindle. And I just want to read this to you because this really helps bring it into context of what we just went through. It says, before you go any further, please read this. He says, in our previous books, Sharon and I have attempted to sketch the history of the long supernatural war between God and the gods. We found that the three-letter word G-O-D is a stumbling block to some, so I'd like to explain how and why I use it. Modern Christians have been taught and conditioned to believe that there is only one God in all of creation. The problem is you can just read the book of Genesis. You got two different gods there, two different events. I digress. Cheers, everyone, by the way. And it says, that's true. However, as the Hebrew prophets, the first century apostles, and the early church fathers knew, there are many gods. I contend that is true. I don't think we've ever been introduced to it, but that could be just me. We English speakers tend to use that three-letter word as a proper name, God, meaning the creator. the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Trinity, composed of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But God is not the name by which he revealed himself to Moses. The name God shared with Moses was I am, or Yahweh, which is usually translated into English as Yahweh. And before that, he was known to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, usually rendered in English as God Almighty. Another interpretation is the multi-breasted one. The bottom line is this. The English word God with a lowercase g refers to a spirit being, a denizen of the spirit realm, often worshipped by pagans as a deity. They always got to get the pagans in there, right? Keep an open mind. If this sounds like polytheism, please put that thought out of your mind. God, that is Yahweh, calls these gods multiple times in the Old Testament. Now, I have a problem with Yahweh, so, I'm keeping an open mind. I mean, that's how you learn. Um, yeah. uh, this is solid theological ground. And again, theological, not necessarily proven. These entities are not imaginary. God himself decreed judgment against the gods of Egypt in Exodus, issued a death sentence to the unjust gods of the nations in Psalms 82, and made his will clear to Moses when he issued the first of the 10 commandments, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Now, of course, he didn't tell us that he was a jealous, angry, vengeful son of a bitch. Oh, excuse me. Deity. But again, I digress. Jesus equated Satan with Baal and Zeus, the Greek form of Baal. And I think we can agree that Satan exists. I'd debate that. But, you know, maybe he won't come on. If Satan exists, then Baal Zeus is real. So, wait a minute. In the Latin Vulgate, isn't the Christ name Eusus? Ieususse, or something like that. And if Baal is real, then why not Astarte, Aphrodite, Venus, Chemosh, Ares, Mars, and the rest of the pagan pantheon? As we've shown in previous books, the pagan gods, I have to say, I feel like I'm in honored company, right? Are there if we dig beneath the English translations. Words like plague, hell, meaning hailstones, pestilence, and terror, where gods and demons well known to the prophets and apostles name Rishof, Apollo, of the Greeks and Romans, Beatarad, Debar, and Pachard. The use of the plural gods in Exodus 12 and Psalms 82 and other Bible verses is sufficient. Contrary to what most of us were taught in church, our supernatural enemy is not just the devil. Satan's important, yes, but an entire army of fallen angels and demons, gods, is preparing for the final war against our Creator. But deep in the earth, in an unimaginable dark prison, an old and powerful entity has been in chains for millennia. In this book, I call him a god because that's how he was known to the ancient world. That's how he and his brothers were known to our Lord. He plans to return to the earth as a god, and not just as a god. He schemes to become the God, replacing Yahweh as supreme in the cosmos. Well, the way I look at this, I can appreciate this person's point of view. I want to know what he has gathered, because it's good intel. But I think there's a number of us here would say, well, we don't dig Yahweh. And if you're telling me that that is God and that this is God, the Father of Jesus, well, we got a real problem then. I'll listen, but there's no way you're going to win me over because I used to be on that side. Anyway, love these discussions. So, all right. So, in this case, from this individual's point of view, Yahweh is supreme in the cosmos. I would challenge that, but that's cool. Um, he is in chains, but his role in the long rebellion of the gods is not yet ended. This is his story. So, we're going to have fun with this because Saturn is Satan. And I'm reading it because I looked ahead and I was like, so everything that we just read about the history of all those ancient cultures, what's being interpreted to in this particular case is that, well, that was the act of this God, a literal God, not the God. Well, wait a minute. But that's exactly how it's translated, the God. But how can the God be just a God? My God, I don't know. Um, Fancy God is says, hail Satan. And this is where I would debate that. It's like we've studied this thing, and here's my challenge. And I'm still going to reach out to the guy because I think it would be an interesting discussion. You know, what we have is just what we can go by the written record, right? And then if you're going to look at it, from the predominant point of view, that's going to be through the tradition of the Christian interpretation of the story. And the story can't exist unless there is this nemesis that provides the purpose for the story. And what we're being told is that Satan apparently was on the planet ruling stuff. I mean, okay, I don't buy that, but okay, I can be open-minded enough to say, all right, I can hear it. But I contend, and I've put hard money up there to show me in the Bible where Satan or Lucifer ever commanded a human to make a sacrifice to it, ever commanded a human to sacrifice an animal. Show me where Satan or Lucifer ever commanded an army of people to go in and cut the fetuses out of the mother's bellies, smash the skulls against the head, put the young girls 3 years and 1 day into the sex slave trade, and condone slavery. Show me where Satan commanded any of that. Show me where Satan made commandments that for humans to live under and then violates those very commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Well, what the fuck did you do back there? No one has been able to take me up on the offer. Why? Because it's not in there. So if this other Yahweh is doing all this killing, all this maiming, all this cursing, and you've got this other character, Satan, then show me where, in your conical manuscripts where this entity ever did any of that. The Saturn gets blamed a lot. So if the return of Saturn is a metaphor for the return of Satan, then what if that is in fact that Satan is a extraterrestrial in its very nature? It's not human. So, in other words, what is really being said, this, and we'll pick this up tomorrow, is that there's an alien armada heading to Earth. That's what it's saying. It's just a different interpretation. You can be riding a horse, you can be riding whatever you want. Anyway, well, thank you all for staying with this. It's fascinating to me because again, if we can trace to where these stories originated from, and what bothers me most in this thing, Yahweh was not in the picture until some 2,000 years later. I keep saying maybe Yahweh is really the bad guy. I don't know. All right, everybody, we'll pick this up tomorrow. John Price says, give me back Jupiter's child. Centric says, extraterrestrial, Satan living outside the ice wall. Yeah. But I have found this, maybe it's just me. It's like when someone's been accused falsely, and they're being accused of everything the accuser is actually doing. But the accuser screams so loud that makes the person who's being accused, who's done nothing at all, can't get a word in edgewise. Just saying for a friend. All right, everyone. Much love to you. Hello, Stephanie Marie. How are you? Good to see you. Gaia, what's up? Hey, look who it is. Ye hearts, how are y'all doing? Yahweh is a very evil form of human, yeah, serious badass. That's all I can say. Um, it's nuts. And it is. I mean, everything that we see in this earth is being played out. And again, I don't think these are new characters. I just, I don't. I think that these are some bad hombres. And I think it gets dangerous when us mere mortal humans, when we really start pressing in and you're going, oh shit, I've been doing what? Isn't that true, Mike and Cindy? I'm telling you. All right, everybody. Much love. Operation says, Wayne, you are a rebel. Hey, yeah, yeah. What can I say? It's always been that way. It's like, damn it. And it's been fun, you know? I don't know. Uh, all right, everybody. Much love. I love this, everyone. I'm gonna have to go back and read in the chat room. All right, we'll pick this up tomorrow. I mean, this is a weird, crazy concept. So Satan is really a commander of an army that is apparently either going to come from Earth, outside of Earth, or from the inside of Earth. I guess it depends. And gonna what? Hey Nina, what's up, girl? All right. And you gotta just to me, it's just like, okay, I can dig what you're saying. And you put the rest of it into your own perspective. All right, everybody, much love. Take good care of yourselves. Remember to laugh. It's that's one thing I haven't seen the gods do is laugh. I can never find in the Bible where you read in the Old Testament and God laughed. Never saw it where it said Jesus laughed. I just think that's a little bit odd. But then again, people call me odd. So oddly enough. All right, everybody.